Greetings and salutations, YouTube. We are now returning to our regularly scheduled programming after my incredibly hard bout with another 1940s/medieval illness that I seem to acquire, which is weird because nobody else seems to acquire them, but I do. Which is kind of weird, but if you haven't been watching or caught any of the live streams or are part of the Discord or anything like that, which you can join for as little as $1 a month on Patreon, and you could do it for just 1 month if you would like, which would be really awesome in supporting the channel. This was kind of an expensive bout that I just had of illness. I had a relatively bacteria-resistant strain of diphtheria, which was not super good, but I made it through. You might be able to still kind of hear it in my voice. It was very, very rough on me. I had some quite swollen lymph nodes on a lot of very expensive antitoxins and antibiotics. I shouldn't say very expensive. It was like $400 for like the 3 weeks of antibiotics and stuff I was on, because it had to be some pretty strong stuff. But we're back. I'm not dead, as you can tell, or maybe I'm just really good at composing myself as a ghost. I don't know. Time will tell. I got my hair cute, which is something I'll probably get a lot about in the comments and stuff like that here. Mustache is still here. All the other good jazz. Nothing's really changed other than I was very, very sick. So I appreciate you guys for bearing with me. That's why there wasn't any videos and stuff like that. I was basically energyless. I didn't have any energy to do anything. But now we're at 2 minutes in, so we're going to jump right into it. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite M1 helmet clones ever, the Austrian M75. Now, if you don't know anything, you know I really, really, really like Austrian stuff. Austrian stuff is pretty cool. As you can tell, I got the cool Austrian camouflage cover on it. The M75 is actually probably my favorite M1 helmet variation. It's pretty hard to beat. It's got a lot of really, really neat features. But we'll cover some basic history of stuff like this, and then I'm going to take the cover off of it because it's just kind of cool to look at the beginning of the video. But the Austrian M75 was one of the vast ocean of M1 helmet clones in use, with the Western European powers, the non-Soviet bloc powers, COM bloc powers, in Europe throughout the Cold War. The M75 replaced the M58, which was kind of closer to an M1 helmet. Pretty much the same shell as this, with some kind of minor differences and aesthetic changes and whatnot. But it had more of the classic standard webbing liner, whereas this kind of has a more Stahlhelm-esque liner, which they borrowed from the Germans in their M62 helmet. But Austria was in a very, very unique predicament here where they were sitting. So they were one of the easternmost countries that weren't part of the COM bloc. They jutted into Soviet-controlled territory like a very big salient. And that put Austria into a very strange predicament during the Cold War, not being obviously a communist country, but they were surrounded by, Hungary, which was a communist country, and, basically on 3 sides for the most part, which was really good for NATO and, the United Nations and everybody like that, who was very into containing communism at that point and stuff. It gave them a very good launching point if stuff was to kick off, but it was very bad for Austria. Austria was very, very surrounded, had a lot of very incredibly heavy influence and a lot of pressure on them from both sides, both the COM bloc and the NATO countries. So they went pretty hard into it. Austria is still one of those countries that, because of that, still actually has conscription, where people are required to serve in the military for at least a short period of time because of this predicament that they found themselves in after World War II. So the Austrians would continue using, American M1 helmets and leftover World War II helmets until the 1950s, And in 1958, they would replace it with their first M1 helmet clone, which was a lot like the German M1 helmet clone. It would be a plastic liner with a webbing, very, very similar to the American M1 helmet webbing suspension in it, which I have an American one. We'll compare that when we compare the liners here and we flip the camera around. And then in 1975, much like the Germans did in 1962, they kind of went back to the Stahlhelm-esque liner because it's much better at distributing weight. It's actually a lot more comfortable, I think, in my opinion, having the leather and everything like that, as well as putting some little prongs on the helmet to hold the liner in and stuff like that. But it would still be made out of plastic rather than out of the like American kind of fiberglass like high pressure liners that they would see through the life of the M1 helmet. So, and the Germans would do away with the liner entirely on their M62, which was their last version before adopting a Kevlar helmet, just like this is Austria's last version before adopting their composite helmet in the form of the F2. So, but if you are interested in seeing the German video, I do have a video on the M62 Stahlhelm. If you would like to see that, Germany's final steel helmet, their final Stahlhelm. This would be the Austrian M75 Stahlhelm, their final steel helmet as well. So we're going to now flip this helmet around, all right, and take a look at the liner and everything like that, get into more of the history about it, when it was adopted, when it finally went away in service and stuff like that, how it was used, some of the accessories you could get with it, the features, the fit, the finish, all that other good stuff. And then we'll flip it back around and I'll show it to you from a bunch of different camera angles, how it looks being worn, and all the other good stuff other than right now. So stay tuned for that. Alrighty, so here we are taking a look at the liners. In the middle we have the Austrian M75. On the right we have the West German M62 Stahlhelm. And on the left here, we have an American M1 helmet. So to show you kind of what the liner would have looked like in the M58 Stahlhelm, which was what came before the M75, this is kind of what it would have looked like. It would have been your classic kind of suspension on the helmet. You know, it would have been the same kind of cottony blend material. It would have had the same kind of leather sweatband, adjustable in a lot of the same ways. Kind of a one-size-fits-all type thing, which kind of made the helmet gigantic and bulbous looking. But it would have been a plastic liner rather than this kind of fiber liner like the Americans had, much like it is on the M75. The M75 liner came in a number of sizes, and it had a bunch of different features to it. So we could get that out of the way here and just move over what it is based off of. So as you can see here, the M62 helmet is much like, it's also an M1 helmet clone, but it has no removable liner. The liner is permanently riveted in place, and it has a Stahlhelm-esque kind of suspension. The leather with the perforated dots, the same kind of sweatband perforation and stuff there at the front to absorb sweat. All the other good jazz. But they did away with the liner and just had a hard, riveted in suspension, which is kind of nice because it allows you to make the helmet at a few different sizes, which is going to be better for everyone's, for one, comfort, and for two, protection, having a helmet that fits you better. Whereas a big problem with the M1 is it is a one-size-fits-all helmet, which means it's absolutely way too big and way too heavy for some people, and for some people it's honestly even kind of small, which is really, really bad. So the Austrians, much like the Germans did in 1962 and stuff like that, went to a helmet, so they kept the same shell. There's a one size shell, whereas the Germans didn't. The Germans have two different size shells, I think, for the M62, but they have 4 different liner sizes. The Austrians did kind of the same thing, except they kept the one size fits all shell, and they have different liner sizes. And how you would remove the liner on this is they kept kind of the standard. You have your leather liner chin strap, which is a really nice feature. I like this on the M1 because then if you're like an engineer or a construction worker or something like that, or just directing traffic, you can wear just the liner without needing to wear the actual heavy steel shell part, which still gives you the authority and a little bit of bump protection and stuff like that if you need it, much like a hard hat would, rather than needing to wear the big heavy steel part of the helmet. So the liner is held in place with 2 kind of spring steel clips, which is something the Austrians added on the M75, which is one way you could tell an M75 shell from an M58 shell, is the fact that these little spring steel clips are on there. And what they do is they hold in the liner, because the liner is actually it is a textured plastic to reduce shine. Unlike with the American helmet, the Austrians never really issued a cover with their helmet, so the liner is very kind of slippery, and it would slide out of the M58 pretty easily, with the only thing holding it in being this chin strap from the front. It would tend to slip out in the back if you would set your helmet down and pick it up and stuff, especially if it got wet. So you see a lot of soldiers like stuffing paper and bits of leather and sometimes even twigs and stuff behind the liner in the M58 to keep the liner from sliding out, which would kind of, bend the shell and reduce the comfort of the liner and stuff like that, which is kind of bad. So they decided to just add some little clips here in the rear to aid in the retention, along with the kind of leather chin strap for the liner over the bill of the shell. So the chin strap itself is the same 2-point chin strap, okay? It's just cotton riveted in place. It has the same kind of German style attachment method for the chin strap. You have one solid lug, okay, which is the extra secure point of the helmet. And then unlike the German one though, the Austrians kind of upgraded their chin strap just a little bit. Same attachment method, come on now. But they have an offset 2 loops here. So these are brass loops and they're black and brass. This one is split in the end, which is good because then when you put this lug in it, okay, if you're in a blast, you can pull hard enough, okay, or like if your helmet gets caught on something or somebody grabs it or whatever, it pulls hard enough, the chin strap will just pop right out of it. Another cool feature about the fact that it is offset, so this one is like about an inch further down the chin strap than the solid buckled one, is it makes room for a gas mask, which is something that, chemical warfare had existed in World War I. It was something people were still very concerned about. The Germans didn't do that with theirs. They have their 2 hooks, as you can see, right through the same loop. They're the same length. So you would have to adjust your chin strap. Whereas the Austrians here now with their M75, if they had to put a gas mask on, they could just put it on and get an extra inch of space without needing to adjust their chin strap, if at all, very little. Which is kind of a neat feature. So it's got all the same benefits as the German one, but just something a little slight extra. So you can see the where the stamp is for the shells, right here. So this is the stamp for an Austrian-made shell. A lot of them you're going to find are going to be dated 82. The vast majority of them that I find here in the United States are actually dated 82. You can see that the rim is a rear seam, and they have a whole bunch of pinch welds around to keep the rim from coming off, like a lot more than an American one would. They have a couple of them here in the back, right where the seam is, but then they have at various different spots all the way around the rim more pinch welds to make sure that the rim does not come off the helmet shell. Something kind of a small feature that a lot of people didn't think of, because the rims do actually come off of a lot of American M1s and stuff like that. So the Austrians just went out of their way to make sure that wouldn't happen with theirs, which is kind of something they're known for. But the liner would just pop right in like that. And as you can see, if you put your chin strap then over the bill of the helmet like you're supposed to wear it and all that other good jazz, then now you have your helmet shell. Even if I shake it a lot, your liner won't fall out of the helmet because there wasn't a cover to hold it in place or anything like that. So the liners would come in a bunch of different sizes. They are normally kind of stamped on the liner. So mine is very faded. This is a size 56 to 58, which is kind of the mid size. There's a larger size than this, and you can kind of tell what size it is even if you can't see the stamp based on these plastic spacers. So if it has no plastic spacers, it's the largest size, and if it has like 3 of them, it's the smallest size. So this is the 1 spacer around at every of the 4 points there. So that's how you could tell that this is kind of the 3rd size, the 3rd largest size of the liner. So if you're looking for one on eBay, if you think these are cool, which I highly recommend you get one of these because it's actually a super awesome M1 helmet variation. That's a good way you could tell what size it is. And they go in the same bracket of, obviously, centimeters. So this is a 56 to 58. I think the one below this is 54 to 56, And then the one behind this is like 58 to 61, I believe. That's about how it is. So it's I think the back size you can get for an Austrian M75 is 61 centimeters. So if you have a head size bigger than that, you're kind of out of luck, unfortunately. But that's a good way to tell the size. And you could probably look up the brackets, but if they don't list what the liner size is, you can use the fact that if they have pictures of the spacers, you can count the number of plastic spacers, and that'll help you know what size it is compared to if you can't see the actual marking. So the liner also has a big cotton cross strap in it to once again help kind of the deformation pattern as well as the weight distribution. It's hooked to the four main parts of the suspension here, and that's going to help distribute the weight of this helmet very, very well, actually. And then it breaks it down a little bit further because the cotton doesn't actually touch your head. All of these little tongues on the leather does. So you're distributing the weight across 4 major points and then all of these minor points, which gives it a very even, very nice feeling weight distribution, which is something a lot of people take for granted in helmets. They don't realize how much faster bad weight distribution can wear you out, especially your neck. You know, the neck is the actual Achilles heel of the body. And having good weight distribution like this is going to reduce the strain on your neck and your shoulders and your back and stuff a lot more than you think. Because you pick this up and you're like, oh, a lot of people are like, that's heavy. And they don't realize that like composite helmets are even heavier than these. But especially if you're not used to it, having something like this, if you're a new conscript where you have very good weight distribution, makes it a lot more bearable. So now we're going to flip the helmet back around. We're going to finish up some brief history and stuff with it. Show you how it looks being worn, how long this helmet was being used and stuff like that. Show it to you from different angles and all that stuff. And then we will conclude the video. Alrighty, so here we are back with the Austrian M75 Stahlhelm. I have obviously taken the cover off of it. This is how they would have mostly looked. You see a lot more pictures with them. The only thing they were ever really issued with, other than what you see here, is you would see a net that they would use kind of to help put foliage and stuff in them and help break up the outline of this helmet, because like I said, they were never really issued with a cover per se, at least on a very, very large scale. There were some field-made covers. There were some kind of other little bits and stuff people did to them. I've seen some kind of burlap and canvas covers and stuff, but those really weren't issued with the helmet, so you really only see the net officially with the Austrian M75. And the Austrian M75 would be used obviously from 1975 until its full replacement, which was actually kind of late into the 90s, by the F2 helmet, which I happen to have here. This is an Austrian F2 helmet. Not the mount on it or anything. That one's a Canadian Cavex helmet mount. But the cover and the helmet itself is an Austrian F2 helmet. So they would use this helmet up until the adoption of basically their version of the Pasget, which was made in France, and everything like that. It was a pretty long-serving helmet. 1975 until the 90s is, you know, only really 15 years. But Austria had a lot of other cool benefits with obviously their M1 helmet production. They exported M1 helmet shells to a lot of other countries, including, you know, Denmark, Norway, stuff like that. Countries would buy Austrian M1 helmet shells and usually make their own liners or get liners from somewhere else. But the Austrians exported a lot of these helmets to other countries because they were pretty well known for being some of the best M1 helmet variants. Their steel is known to be. I'm not sure, you know, obviously batches of steel can change with time and production and stuff like that, but they're known to have some fairly good steel and everything like that, and be a really, really actually high quality helmet, as you saw with all the pinch welds and stuff like that. Everyone's like, well, you can't really improve the M1 helmet shell. Well, they actually did. Their chin strap is much better than just about any other M1 helmet chin strap. Their rim is spot welded in so many places, you know, pinch welded in so many places that it really isn't ever going to come off. The paint is, you know, not a super good paint, but it is a matte paint pretty much without having a ton of texture in it and everything like that, because, you know, sand and stuff can, you know, obviously scratch up the steel. It can eventually, you know, cause problems to the other surface of the helmet. You don't really see a lot of Austrian helmets that have lost a lot of their paint because they used a very kind of innovative paint in their helmet and stuff, obviously, while also not being all that shiny. So it's kind of a neat thing. It's a lot of little features that add up to be a very, very good helmet. with the Austrian M75, which is why it's probably my favorite M1 variant helmet ever, and I'd have to say hands down it actually is, because a lot of people don't know that this thing, for one, exists, for two, has all of these cool little innovative features that actually make it so much better than the original American M1, and it's actually also one of the latest generation M1 helmets to ever be used. So it's super, super cool. The Austrians did that, of course, with traditional German efficiency and Austrian manufacturing capabilities, which are kind of historically known to be off the charts, and their attention to detail is kind of off the charts. It makes it one of the best M1 helmets out there, and actually one of the best stall helms ever made as well. So hopefully you learned something and all that other good stuff like that in this video. Before we wrap it up, though, we're going to show it to you from a bunch of different angles, and then we're going to conclude the video. I'm going to start editing and stuff like that, and then I got to get changed and head off to work. This video is being shot very, very early in the morning, so hopefully it uploads at a reasonable speed. My internet's been kind of lately, so. But without further ado, this is the Austrian M75 helmet from the front. I'm obviously not wearing the chin strap. You hardly ever see them with the chin strap down, other than in posed photos. They wore it a lot like the Americans up on the rear of the helmet. So that's just how they decided to do it, and it's pretty comfortable, but if you need it, you could always just wear the chin strap normal. So this is the Austrian M1 helmet from, the Austrian M75 helmet, sorry, from the front profile. This is it from the right side profile. This is it from the rear profile, and as of course we're going to simulate going prone as always. I'm going to look up as high as I can to see if the helmet is going to bite into my neck or my equipment if I was wearing equipment like collared body armor or anything at the time. So it doesn't touch, it doesn't bite, it barely rubs on my clothes and stuff like that, but a lot of that is because I don't have the chin strap on, so it's kind of moving around a lot. But if I just lightly hold the M75 in place, when I look up, it's actually a very, very stable, even without the chin strap, very, very stable, comfortable helmet to wear, and it doesn't have any bite into the neck or the shoulders or anything like that. You could get away wearing winter equipment with this pretty quick. It wouldn't rock forward into your eyes and heads too much as long as you fit it well. So, and there's quite a lot of adjustability in this helmet too with the liners actually. There is a little underneath the leather kind of sweatband type area, there's a little tension buckle that you can use to kind of snug up the liner a little bit, which gives you even better weight distribution as well as stability on this helmet, which is how they can get away with this late actually having only a 2-point chin strap. Because the helmet, even if I'm not doing up the chin strap as you see here, I look up, the helmet still barely moves. It's that stable even without a chin strap on, because the weight distribution is so good on this and the stability is so good on this liner that you don't really have any problems with that. And it's little features like that that make a really, really good helmet actually. So, and this is it from the left side profile. So, hopefully you learned something in today's video, and you found out some features about a helmet that a lot of people really overlook, and they don't understand or anything like that. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you have one of these. If you are a helmet collector, much like myself, they are a very, very awesome addition to the collection and all that other good jazz. So, thank you all for stopping by. If you choose to support me on Patreon or anything like that, I will leave a link in the description. It goes an incredibly long ways. The goal is to hopefully reach $100 by the end of the year. We're at about 60. The year is obviously over half over. So I doubt we'll get there, but any support goes a long ways. If I could get $100 a month, I could do so much stuff with the channel, it wouldn't even be funny. And all of the Patreon money goes back into the channel, like the editing software you're seeing in this video, stuff like that. It got me a brand new webcam for live streams, which I try to do a few times a week. They are kind of sporadic though, based on my work schedule. So if you choose to support me and stuff like that, it does do a long ways. Patreon members also get first access to stuff I'm selling, and usually a discount and stuff like that too. So thank you all for stopping by, and hopefully I can see all of you here in the next video. Bye-bye now.